네, 시작하도록 하겠습니다. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Moon-Yevin, PhD student in AMI lab. Today, I would like to talk about the paper named Diagnosing and Rectifying Vision Models Using Language. This paper is published at ICLAIR 2023, and it is from the Professor Serena Young's group. The contents is as follows. First, I will talk about the introduction, and then talk about the transferability between different modalities, and then diagnosing and rectifying vision models using language, and then finally we will talk about the conclusion. So first, introduction. As a computer vision or deep learning researcher, we have downloaded a lot of models from the web. However, these models are, most of them were tested only on the limited data. So do you trust the downloaded models? And how can you trust them? To do so, we need to do a model quality assurance process to prevent unexpected and catastrophic failures of the models. There are some methods to do for the model quality assurance. First one is aerosolized discovery methods. By this method, we can find some subsets of the inputs where the model performs significantly worse. And another method is interpretability methods. By this method, we can understand the reason why the model fails for certain inputs. And the other one is model diagnosis method. By this method, we can understand the when and why model fails. Actually, this existing method have some problem. That is, they rely on large enough data sets to cover the potential failure modes of the interest. In this paper, as a solution, they propose to generate diverse natural language inputs because language is much less laborious than vision modality to collect some data sets. So next section, we will talk about the cross-modal transferability. They propose to use some language instead of the image, so we should check it is possible to using text modality instead of image modalities. Before we started, I will talk about the notation first. When the image and text pair is given, image is denoted as large X and text is as large Y. We can extract some embeddings from pre-trained image and text encoders. They are denoted as fx and fy. Their embeddings are small x and small y. And we can use these embeddings to train some classifiers. When we use the text embedding, this classifier is called as text classifiers. And if we use the image embedding, then we can call it as vision classifiers. In this paper, they focused only on the visual classification models obtained through multi-modal contrastive learning, such as CLIP. So to check the text input are good proxies for image. They first define some concept of cross-modal transferability and modality gap. First, the cross-modal transferability. A vision classifier, we can say that a vision classifier achieves cross-modal transferability when it outputs some similar prediction on X and Y. In other words, the difference across the prediction pair is small. So when regardless of the given modality, the classifier should predict some similar outputs. Then we can call it as it has some cross-modal transferability.
Sorry, excuse me. So in this definition of the transferability, the X and the Y come from the different modality, that's the assumption, or the same modality?
Different modality.
Then H is okay. Vision classifier H can take the image or the texting inputs. So it's kind of the unified word model agnostic the function. The H is used.
Actually, the H is trained with the embedding from visual inputs. So trained with the image embeddings.
I see. Actually, notation itself, X and Y are not the image and the text itself, but the latent features.
Latent features. So it is trained with image embeddings, but when we do some tests on this pre-trained this trained classifier, vision classifier, if regardless of the modality, we should predict the similar outputs, and then we can say it has some cross-modal transferability. And then they borrow some definition of the modality gap from the reference below, which is the Minder gap, years 2022 paper. Actually, intuitively, we can easily think that the embeddings are clustered per pair or per class, but actually the embeddings are approximately clustered per modality. It is, if you interest in this process, you can refer this reference. So in the paper, the modality gap is defined as the distance between these modality clusters. So in this paper, individual level modality gap is denoted as G, which is X minus Y, and the class level modality gap is GC, which is difference between the expectation of the X and X minus expectation of the Y.
So here, to be more specific, X and the Y are assumed to be pairs, right?
Yeah.
From the same data.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So in the experimental results, the modality gap, based on these results, we can see that the modality gap can be approximated by a constant vector. Do you know about the constant vector? The constant vector is that its magnitude and their direction remain unchanged regardless of the environment. So the variance of the magnitude and the direction is very small in these results. So so we can say that the modality gap G is considered as the constant vector.
Actually, the term in any environment is quite ambiguous for me. So what it means by any environment? Does it mean that any data set or any models?
I think it is regardless of which maybe I think environment in here is all the individual and all the classes can be the environment here, I think.
So in my understanding, model may involve the some of the actions that may be varied. So, for example, across classes and across modality, not modality, because the content vector gap is defined between the two modalities. So this should not be modality, but any class and any individual pairs. Yeah. So even though there is a changes across the pairs, maybe some vector direction is unchanged, then it can be said as a constant.
Yeah. So environment can be considered as class in the class case and also the sample pair in the individual case. And then
Your voice is diminishing.
sorry. And then the modality gap is orthogonal to the span of image and text embedding. The orthogonality is defined as follows. This first part, x minus expectation of x, is can be considered as the span of image, and g is the modality gap. So when this value is 0, then we can consider the modality gap is orthogonal to the span of the embeddings. And the image and text embeddings have zero mean in the subspace orthogonal to the modality gap. So if the center is 0, then we can say like this. So in this equation, we subtract some factor related to the modality gap here. So this is the subspace orthogonal to the modality gap. So if this value have near 0 value, then we can say that these embeddings have 0 mean in the subspace of the orthogonal to the modality gap.
So you're computing the Graham-Schmidt kind of way for computing the center, or it looks like
not for computing the center, but for
finding the orthogonal direction.
So first estimate the component of component in the space of the gap by G, and then subtract that component involved in the G space from X.
Yeah.
So it's a first order direction.
So we know all about this vector, so we can easily compute it by this equation. So based on this definition and also the experimental results, the classifier input between training and cross-modal evaluation only differs in a constant G. So it is same as the G is the constant vector. So the modality gap G is orthogonal and the constant vector to the span of the embeddings. And then we can consider it as the weight matrix of the learned classifier. It is also the orthogonal to the G. So the prediction of the classifier is not affected by G. So based on this process, we can check the cross-modal transferability of the classifier. Actually, there is some theoretical proof in the paper. So if you're interested in that kind of proof, you can refer the paper. Actually, we check the cross-modal transferability, but we know that there is still have some constant gap. So to further close this modality gap, they propose to feed some variants of input during training and evaluation. During training, they feed x minus expectation of the x to the classifier instead of x, and during the evaluation, they feed y minus expectation of y instead of y. In the experimental results,
sorry, I didn't
Yep.
get that. From the last page, during training, it is the last layer H is trained with the modified version of the latent
Yes.
x minus expectation
Yeah.
average, so that it can be can discard the offset, right?
That's right.
To be generated. Okay. I don't intuitively understand how this is related to G by subtracting the expectation from X.
As far as I remember, the orthogonality, like G vector, is defined after centering the x and y distributions with their individual means. So after making them as a zero mean, then I think G can be applied to model like H.
Oh,
Right, but the trained H, is also on to the G. It can be trained in that way, but still, the gap could remain, right? X minus average and the Y minus average may have the different descent. There must be some the equation related to this x and the y. There must be some.
the G is defined by x minus y. So when we use x minus expectation x instead of x, and then y minus expectation y instead of y, then it will be so. I think.
Yeah, let's think about it later. Then let's move on.
In this result, we can the results show that the cross-modal transferability is possible regardless of the modality gap. So for the visual classifier, when we evaluate on image or text, they show similar performance regardless of the modality. And when we close the modality gap further, then more improvement is we can see the more improvements. So then for diagnosing vision models using language, they propose to discover error slice for when the model is fail and identify influential attributes for why the model fails. So first, discovering error slices. The error slices is defined as follows, which is the subset of the inputs having much larger error than any other samples. So as I mentioned before, the there is some problem that they need a large enough test data set for that covers all of the data distribution, including some model failure of interest. So as a solution, they proposed Dr. ML, for which is discovering aerosolysis through language inputs. For Dr. ML, first they define an attribute set A, and then given some specific attribute subset, they generate with this defined attributes and also predefined prompts. Using some prompts and this attribute, they generate the language inputs. So the characteristics of Dr. ML is because they use the text modality, it can achieve diversity and also generate some novel set based on the novel attributes, and this allowing the discovery of more comprehensive and unseen aerosolysis. And also reducing the human costs. And then because we use the language, it is human interpretable. For the experiments, they first use water birds dataset, which have 95% of water birds appear in the water, and the rest of the 5% is appear in the land, and also 95. Water bird in the water is 95, and water birds in the land is 5%.
Land bird in the
Yeah.
land is
And
5,
95% of the land birds appear in the land, and 5% of land birds appear on the water. So this dataset is widely used for spurious correlation problem. So in these results, the aerosolyses are represented as the bolts. So the top identified aerosolyses are water birds in the land and land birds in the water. So they correctly find some aerosolyses.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get how they discovered that function. How did they discover that property? The property is the top identified aerosolize. So what is the procedure, the algorithm, how they apply it? I think the Dr. ML is the way to generate a prompt generator in a random way, combinatorial way. So we need to first define the set, attribute set A, and then we can randomly select the attributes.
Actually, I think in this year they know about the attribute that is related to the test. So in this, human crafted attributes. So in this water birds data set, the attributes is water and land.
Water and land. So there is only 2 classes in the data set. I see. I see.
And actually, the results in the fair phase is similar with the water birds, so I pass it. And for the D spirits B dataset, which is widely used for shape classification, and this dataset have images of shapes with different colors, sizes, and positions. So during training, they only use orange triangles or green squares images. For the results, they correctly find that the green triangles and orange squares, which is swept color and shape, is the critical error slices.
I'm kind of like still confused how this doctor something works. Like how you can like prompt the text to figure out this error slices. I'm kind of like still confused how this the model decompose works. Do you have like examples or some pipeline figures? Like
I think it will be the example. So we know about the task-related attributes. So in this example, we want to identify some influence of this ocean attribute. Then we can generate actually it is a little different, but we can generate a photo of water bird on the ocean and a photo of water bird in land like this. So with this different attribute, we can generate some different inputs, and we can extract the different text embeddings and then predict this text prompts can be classified as water bird rather than land bird.
so those text inputs are fed to the image classifier.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
In this practically is seems clear how the attribute set is made. The green triangle, orange square, pink triangle, those can be the elements of all the attributes. But
That's right.
so we can easily generate the combination of them, right?
That's
Like that actually lead to the counterfactual the combination, like green square that does not exist in the class list, right?
Actually trained with green squares and orange triangles, but we can test on the green triangles and
so
orange
green
squares.
triangle didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
In the training set, so we can easily generate the counterfactual example cases. But for the fair face, I don't understand how the attribute set is made. Because the attributes are only the ones nice like colors, right? And in order to
But
check this, yeah, sure.
This fair face data set is for gender classification. New
스페셜 줌 빠졌어요?
줌 화면에 보이고 있어.
This fair face data set is actually for the gender classification, and the attribute can be the color of.
Attributes are the color that do not include. Okay, training data does not include any metadata or the information of the color, right? So training data, during training, the color has not been seen. Color attribute has not been seen, right?
No. In this case, all the colors are can be seen in during the training, but the ratio between this color is very different. So some kind of attribute is underrepresented during the training.
Okay, that's I understand, but I'm curious about how the prompt is generated. In this case,
Oh.
approved is just black, Indian, Asian, and white. So
Black woman, black man,
yeah, yeah.
like this. Yeah,
Good.
that's right.
So
Actually, the
the
problem.
gender and the color, those two are the options. That's it.
Actually, the targeted target is a little different because fair face is targeted for the underrepresented data, and the spirits B is targeted to the unseen data. So it is a little bit different, but the method is the same.
No. It sounds like depending on the data set, the user needs to somehow define and design the way to generate the prompt. I mean, template. The prompt template should be generated, should be designed by the human, right?
Yeah.
For testing.
That's right.
Let's see. So what is the data ML then? Is I thought it appeared to be like an automatic method of generating the critical combination of the prompt, but it does not, right?
But the existing methods only use the visual data for diagnosing the visual model, but they try to use some text inputs. Additionally, they also find some unseen slices, which is pink triangle. And then they try to identify some influential attributes to know about why the model fails. Because they use language, which is directly interpretable for human, we can easily do the counterfactual analysis using this language modality. So by generating some prompt with and without attribute, and we can easily measure the average prediction change between this with and without the attribute. So for example, when we want to check the influence of the attribute ocean on the class of whatever, we generate some text inputs such as a photo of whatever on the ocean and a photo of just whatever. Then we can compute the average difference of the model predicted probability of the whatever. Then they try to rectify the vision model using language. So the goal of this rectifying is when the error slices are given, then we want to rectify the model performance by minimizing the size of the error slices. So the method is as follows. For each list of attributes, we can generate a large set of natural language inputs related to this discovered slice by some attribute composition and prompt manipulation. And then and then continue the training of the classifier on this generated text inputs. It is very simple, but because we use the language, we don't need any visual data for rectification. As a result, when we rectify the model, we can achieve some significantly improvements by very simple method. but there is minor influence on other slices. So in conclusion, this paper proposed the way diagnosing and rectifying the vision classifier trained using embeddings from a multi-modal contrastive model. So for diagnosing, they identify the error slices and influential attributes, and for rectifying, they fine-tune the classifier with the generated text inputs. So in my opinion, I think it may not be limited to the multimodal contrastive model. And also we should think about how can it be extended to other modalities and other tasks. And this is end of presentation. Thank you for listening.